within the idea of simulation theory, there's all kinds of possibilities one can imagine and come to about, well, what that must mean. And then you try to take some of the phenomena, the strange phenomena we see in our actual world, and you try to fit that into simulation theory. And it's a fun thought experiment. Well, one of the ideas that my mind spits out if I try to brainstorm like that is the UFO phenomenon. It's now become more and more commonly understood or commonly thought that whenever people see a UFO and it takes off at fucking blink of an eye, takes off at ridiculous speeds, and or it can hover in place perfectly, no sound, there's no exhaust, there's no heat signature. It's almost like this massless object that's sort of abiding by its own laws of physics, almost. I've considered this possibility that if we're living in a simulation, wouldn't that be one of the most obvious ways that the developers of this simulation would come in and tweak things? Now, in one of my previous videos, I pointed out the possibility that if we're in a simulation, I can imagine that we might be artificial intelligence created by those that made the simulation. In other words, we don't have a body outside of here that's laying down, plugged in and we don't have a body to wake up into from this simulation. We are made of the same physically digital compared to the people who made the simulation, compared to the beings that made it, compared to their reality. Our physical reality, our physical laws of physics, our world here is a digital version of our creator's reality. Just like how our computers and whatever's inside them is a digital version of our reality. We've digitized our reality and programmed it to be a rudimentary form of what our reality is. That's why in video games, the things are always more primitive and simple in terms of physics than they are out here in the real world. So as I mentioned in that previous video, that our simulated reality here is something that obeys certain laws of physics that are programmed into the very fabric of our physics here. And there are little rules, such as the speed of light is literally the cosmic speed limit. An object that accelerates, the closer it gets to the speed of light, the more mass that it has. And as it approaches the speed of light, its mass becomes infinite. And when that happens, actually that apparently can't happen according to Einstein's special theory of relativity, or theory of special relativity, and you can't go there.
I was standing over him and I was screaming, "I told you not to go there! I told you not to go there!"
As a physical object in this reality, in our world, we don't know, scientifically we don't know how to get to the speed of light, because mass becomes infinite. It's almost like there's this sort of programmed in rule not to let anything go faster than that. I don't know if it's because the computer that processes the simulation we're in can't process anything moving faster than that. It's too much to process. Sort of like in a video game, not letting NPCs, non-player characters, go beyond the threshold and area of what has been loaded for the player to see, wherever the player is located, to save processing power in video games, in case you don't know, but I would assume you do. Anyway, wherever the player is located in like the city or the video game's terrain, that area, just like at like one half-mile radius, that area gets loaded in. All the textures are high detail, and then the further you go away from the player, the lower the texture details are, the lower the quality of everything is, and there's less and less other characters like pedestrians and cars and trees. Branches are not blowing in the wind, their trees are standing still. so that it saves processing power so the processor can focus on wherever the player is located. In a similar fashion, maybe in the simulation is programmed that it doesn't want anything moving faster than the speed of light because it can't process beyond that speed. Or maybe they just needed a physics engine, and within that physics engine, the physics engine doesn't have a capacity to handle anything that goes faster than that. So maybe it's just like part of the equation. It's just like a natural part of the equation. It's like, well, like speed of light. What should be the fastest thing in this simulation? Well, let's make it this fast, and then we'll make light travel at that speed. It's the fastest thing that can happen. Anyway, so we humans have currently it's scientifically and physically not within our means to travel at speeds that we see UFOs travel at in the footage that we see, assuming it's real. Even if it's not, whatever. But if UFOs are real, we can't travel at that speed, obviously. So it's almost as if, and we don't have gravity propulsion systems. And if we do, then obviously the citizens such as you and I, we're not aware of it. Unless you work for Area 51 or whatever the fuck, or you work for Wright-Patterson Air Force Base or wherever, then maybe you've seen it, and maybe you're watching this video like, this guy has no idea the shit I've seen. Oh, gravity propulsion. We're gonna crack that soon. We'll figure it out. It's not easy. Anyway, I'm gonna continue watching this video, but this guy has no idea. But for the common citizens, we are unaware of any such technology, and so let's just assume that we humans don't have it. we don't have the ability to manipulate gravity, but it seems that the UFO do. These flying saucers can totally manipulate gravity. What if these flying saucers are the developers of the simulation popping in here, entering the simulation in a sort of form that maybe better represents what they look like, or is sort of a rendering of the thing that is sort of a, bear with me here, whatever this reality and the laws of physics here have to do to give rise to consciousness and a body that can carry consciousness, such as a human body or any other animal creature out there or being that has a consciousness. There's certain rules that has to be in place. Like a skull is good if you're on dry land and in the air. A skull is good to keep in place this brain, right? Just like for you to be within the digital reality of a video game, you kind of have to have something by which you move around. Now you can of course just be a spectator and just move around when you press the keys or whatever, and you move around in there, and you have sight, but you don't have a body. So I guess they could do that, but I would assume that similar to the movie The Matrix, how the machine world has to have a sort of manifestation within the Matrix itself, so they have these agents. An agent can't just fucking delete a human from the simulation called the Matrix. An agent has to literally go and kill them, because it's not within the physical rules and equations and programming. The programming doesn't contain that, and it can't, because the whole thing runs on a physics engine, right? And so within a physics engine, you can't just fucking, program in something simple as delete a thing. The physics engine will be like, what do you want me to delete? Delete that person. And the physics engine is like, I don't know what you mean by person. Obviously, there's no dialogue between a physics engine and the programmer, but this is what the dialogue would be like if they were personified. When you program a game or whatever, if you program into it a physics engine, the computer that you're programming, the language you're using to program things, that language, it doesn't intuitively know what you mean by person. You have to define it. You have to give it boundaries. And something as sophisticated as our reality, the way it might be programmed through simulation, if it's a simulation, the way it might be programmed, the physics engine it needs to run on is so sophisticated. And so because of that, I kind of wonder, that maybe our physics engine that the simulation developers of our simulation here programmed, the physics engine doesn't know what it means to put consciousness in here, such as to like bring the consciousness of the developers in here so that they can kind of look around and check on things in the form of UFOs. Doesn't know. The physics engine can't put them in here without there being some kind of physical manifestation of them. So that, you know, like the photons have to be trapped by your eyes in order for you to see and for you to have sight. If you were just a fucking sort of a spectator, as if you would expect to be in a video game where you can't be seen, technically, if the photons of light around you doesn't get trapped anywhere, then you would never see anything. It has to be trapped by your eye, and those rods and cones have to transmit signals to your brain. That's the only way you're able to see. If the light passed right through your head, you would be blind. You wouldn't see it because you're not detecting photons, so you're not seeing anything. So in that same way, in order for the developers to come in here and sort of manipulate the environment, manipulate things, have the ability to manipulate things in this simulation that we're in, they have to have a sort of physical presence and physical manifestation. And so I'm wondering if the physical manifestation of the developers who made this simulation is UFOs. The spaceship is how they move around. We call it a spaceship, but it's actually maybe something far more sophisticated than a spaceship, because it bends physical laws that we don't understand how to bend. And their bodies are just a more simplified version of our bodies. You know, these smaller, fickle, thin, large-headed, large eyes. Maybe that's a sort of middle ground between a physical body that our physical reality would sensibly hold based on its laws of physics and conduct consciousness. The most minimalistic version of that can hold and conduct consciousness. So a middle ground between our physical world and the whatever form these developers of our simulation, whatever form they are, whatever form of consciousness they are outside of here. Maybe a middle ground between these two realities would be what UFOs, the little alien creatures with the big heads, big eyes. That's what the middle ground looks like. So we look at them, look at them and see them. We're like, oh, well, they're physical. They're not simulation developers. They're aliens. They're from this reality. They don't have to be. You just have to create them. The simulation developers just somehow design it and then pop it into this reality from the far reaches of outer space, where maybe that's where the limit of our simulation is. They pop it into reality and you know, they decide how they want to hack the laws of physics of the simulation because they programmed it. So maybe their ability to have gravity propulsion and move at ridiculous speeds is them literally just hacking the code and being like, okay, let's unlock this little physics equation wherever our spaceship's located. That's going to just sort of undo the physics engine and switch the physics engine over to allow us to have gravity manipulation. So maybe it's possible that it's only let me try again. So maybe it's possible that it's only the developers of our simulation here, those beings, that they are the only ones who have access to the gravity propulsion system, because they are the only ones who can hack the code they have coded and programmed on which this whole simulation runs. They can unlock it just for themselves, kind of like an administrator on the computer unlocks, you know, the permission to overwrite a file or something. You are the administrator of your computer, so you get to unlock it. But a file on its own can't unlock the administrator permissions. So maybe it's only the UFOs that can do that, because they're literally the creators of the simulation and they can hack the code because they wrote it. And so they move in the fucking blink of an eye. And who knows, maybe they can bend time too. I mean, maybe time was also programmed. Maybe time isn't real out there. I don't know what that would be like. Although I also talked about that in the previous video I mentioned, where I talked about this being a simulation, where we are AI in the simulation. You would have to assume that it kind of makes sense that the gravity bubble in which they are, a hacked portion of our simulation, they hacked it because they are the programmers, that enveloping bubble that they are in, the time could be passing differently. The time in that bubble could be passing exactly at the speed at which it passes outside of the simulation that matches the physical world, that matches the reality and time passing of their own reality out there, where their bodies are sitting plugged in to this simulation as they're visiting us in the form of UFOs. You know? I mean, shit, we see it as metal. We see it as a metallic. We see the UFOs as a metallic object. But what if it's not a metallic object? What if it's gravity bubble so strong that it doesn't let light move through it, doesn't let light bounce off of it the way we usually let light bounce off of us. So what I'm saying is, if they're bending the laws of physics, if they're bending the part of the equation of the physics engine that our simulation is running based on, if they're hacking that, then to us that might look like they are in a spaceship, when that spaceship is not even a spaceship. That could literally just be a gravity bubble. To us, it looks like it's made of solid material because light bounces off of it in a way that light bounces off of a fucking solid material. But gravity can bounce and move light in any direction at once. Black holes suck light in all the time. That's why we call them black holes, but they're not really black. It's just that light doesn't escape them. So they look black, but they're not black. It's just an area of space where gravity is so strong that nothing escapes it, so we don't see anything coming back, so it looks black. You know what I mean? Like, the observer's experience is different from the reality of what's actually going on. So it could be that flying saucers are not actually flying saucers and there's nothing there. It could just be a fucking alien creature enveloped in a gravity bubble that to us looks like a spaceship. This seems like another topic. So I'll stop here. I hope you enjoyed this little theory of mine about UFOs just being our simulation's physical manifestation of the development